Welcome back to No Sleep Teal. Travis Reier, Evan Reier, back with you. Evan, a lot has happened in the previous week. We've had NFL team meetings, league meetings down in Orlando. I know that's your favorite city, much
Yeah,
like it is mine, maybe not so much as native Floridians. But anyway, we'll get into some of that talk. We'll talk about Matt Miller and his 7 round mock. The NFL draft analyst for ESPN has unveiled each and every one of his projected picks for next month's draft, including the Jacksonville Jaguars. We'll work through those with Evan, and we'll get into some over under win totals for the NFL with an emphasis on the Jacksonville Jaguars. Evan?
yeah. This is it's in some cases it's the best time of year because nothing but optimism. You're gonna draft 7 Hall of Famers. So, you're gonna nail every single one. Balky's gonna kill every single pick. So seeing all these, mock drafts and that different stuff, the possibilities are endless. It's a good time. And then yeah, you learn a lot at league meetings. If you're paying attention, like coaches and general managers and stuff, they're dropping stuff that matters. It's not just a bunch of shaking hands and all that stuff. So no, it has been hectic, and we still have kind of in the broader national level, we've got plenty of free agency signings still happening, guys that are available. At this point, we might even be kind of technically past the majority of it, and now it becomes all right. What happens in the draft to figure out where those last pieces may go? So yeah, there's still. I mean, it may feel like we've kind of gotten past the brunt of the offseason, but it's really just beginning.
It is, and it's just another sort of illustration of how the NFL just keeps winning all year long. They
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
just transports you from one phase to the next and keeps you maximum engagement when you talk
Yeah,
about the National Football
nobody's
League.
baseball starts this week and or here in a week or so, and I don't
Yeah,
I don't
great
know anyone
draft.
that's yeah.
Pro
I
day at
don't know
LSU today.
I don't
Malik
know
Neighbors
anyone
ran
who's
4.35.
I'm wearing my I'm wearing my Braves hat to raise awareness for the season. Like I'm also trying to remind people, you can watch baseball as well, but
Spencer
no,
Strider, you guys.
yeah,
Yeah,
he's gonna have a heater this year. Cy
yeah,
Young winner, baby. It's
yeah.
coming.
We
But
can certainly hope.
let's get into it.
We'll start with the aforementioned 7 round mock draft as Matt Miller, the NFL draft analyst for ESPN, dropped that baby here in the last 24 hours or so. And when we look at that, Evan, from the Jacksonville Jaguars perspective, Matt has, with the 17th selection in the first round, he has the Jaguars taking Quinyon Mitchell, the corner from Toledo. And I'll know you'll love this because Matt has Terry and Arnold, your guy from Alabama, going to the Cincinnati Bengals with the very next pick.
Well, I mean, the thing is though, is Matt has his job at ESPN, and I guess Trent Baalke has his job with the Jaguars. I am, sitting in my bedroom, so I'm not gonna act like I know better. But I wouldn't have made the same decision. But that being said, if you're not familiar with Quinyon Mitchell, you should be because he is a very exciting player. One, I mean, just recently he ran a 4.33 at the 40-yard dash at the combine. Uh, he is overall like, he's actually a little bit undersized at 6 foot, 195 pounds. But in terms of like in athleticism, I mean, he looks like he could play, almost any skill position on the field, running back, wide receiver. And his ball skills are really impressive. If you go watch, like I've only seen highlights. I'm not going to act like I've watched, all of his snaps or anything. But if you go watch some of those highlights, his ability to high point, his ability to kind of box out receivers. He's one of those types of corners that, halfway through the route, he can be he turns into the receiver.
Well, that all sounds great, Evan. Now, kind of let me know what you're thinking in relation to that pick with some other pieces in that secondary, because we've talked a lot about the nickel, the slot corner position. The Jaguars have obviously made some acquisitions on the back end. How do they play into this if that is in fact the pick? And then also maybe a returning guy or two that could maybe a domino effect in the secondary that some of this stuff could have.
Yeah, Doug and recently said that Darnell Savage, who is has played safety for the majority of his NFL career, is going to start off at the nickel position. That is not necessarily a huge surprise. The Jags really like Antonio Johnson, so it now becomes a question of kind of who's the odd man out on the outside corner spots, because as things kind of stand, if you had to draw up a depth chart right now, it'd be obviously Tyson Campbell number one. Ronald Darby would probably be number two. You might put Monteric Brown number two, but I mean, they paid Ronald Darby like they want him to play a good bit. So it kind of becomes with Quinyon Mitchell. Is this guy, a guy you want to shift inward? That undersized nature of him, he's a guy that you could probably get away with in that sense, because he is very fast, but simultaneously some of those bigger slot guys, like how the Jaguars actually use Evan Ingram, would actually probably give him fits. So that is a concern with him, maybe at slot. But other than that, I mean, really, I think they would, if they draft someone like Mitchell in that spot, they would probably say Darby gets the start maybe week one, if I had to, if I had to predict. But I think it kind of becomes a toss up between those two, because Tyson Campbell, whether he has a disappointing year again or a really good year again, they're going to put him out there all 17 games, as much as like they're going to, fully unload the clip with him. It's either going to work or it's not. Darby is the guy I think, would kind of rotate with Quinyon Mitchell as they kind of figure out, how much does Mitchell need to develop.
Yeah, there's degrees of first round picks too. I mean, there's late
Yeah.
first round guys, there's top 5 picks, there's that mid round where the Jags find themselves. And it's sort of still the expectation, I would think, that if you take a corner in that spot, you're going to expect him to come in and have every opportunity to win that job
Yeah.
opposite of Tyson. And maybe you're able to do some things within your nickel package, or you have some versatility based on some of those moves that you've made or guys that you bring back that can help you at least initially work through that process. So in round 2 of Matt Miller's ESPN 7 round mock draft, he has the Jacksonville Jaguars going SEC for Mason Smith, the big defensive tackle from LSU, a guy I'm pretty familiar with, given my time in the Southeastern Conference covering that league. Big dude, big time recruit just a few years ago coming out of the high school level. Had a really unfortunate knee injury in the season opener back in 2022. That LSU game with Florida State in New Orleans. Very early, he went out for the
ACL
remainder of the
tear, I
season.
think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
still trying to come back from that. I thought it showed last season, but there's no doubt in terms of upside. You look at this guy's measurables, there's some comparisons that you could make to some previous Jacksonville defensive linemen that worked out, I'd say, pretty well.
Yeah, and it's interesting. This He does kind of fit the bulky mold for a defensive lineman. Bulky loves those kind of, he loves one a an extremely athletic guy. He also, famously or infamously loves to draft guys that are, their draft stock has fallen because of injury, where they have the traits that show, oh, this guy could be a first round pick or whatever, but he has, with Smith, he hasn't produced like that at all at the college level to really earn that, but he has all those measurables. This guy looks like a bulky guy. And the very last thing is, he also is a dude that, obviously, played defensive tackle at LSU, but I've seen tons of things like analysis from, even like Lance Zierlein, the guy at NFL.com, saying, he actually might be better suited as like a 3-4 defensive end, playing in one of those side spots, like where, we kind of expect Eric Armstead or Roy Robertson Harris to play. So, the idea of a guy that can play across those 3 spots, has, insane measurables, is all very cool. But again, it's kind of the bulky issue of like, okay, we're going to take a risk on, a guy that, really has not proven a whole lot. I mean, like you said, he just hasn't been able to get on the field a ton at LSU. He just kind of looks the part. I think Miller is actually, I gotta give him a clap, because in terms of trying to emulate a Trent Baalke pick, this is probably the best one in this mock draft. Like,
Yeah,
this
Mason
feels so
Smith
Baalke.
is kind of Eric Armstead in terms of measurables, right? I
Hmm.
mean,
Yeah.
6'6". Um, You're a
310.
longtime Jaguar fan. You remember the John Hendersons, the Marcus
Yeah.
Strouds. Those were 6'6" kind of interior guys. So he fits the mold, and he does have the talent and the ability. Again, coming off that knee injury early in the 2022 season, so his best football is still very much in front of him. He is a guy that, without that injury a couple of years ago, I don't think it's all that difficult to project him as a surefire 3 and out first round guy. That
Yeah.
obviously set him back some, but you said it. I think some of the stars align in terms of what would the surprise level be. Maybe positionally, it might be a little bit of a surprise to go there, but in terms of makeup and what you want at that position, certainly a position of value, as we know, and could be a selection there. How about round 3 with Matt Miller? We see he has Javon Baker, wide receiver, UCF. That sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Um,
It
Jags
does.
just went there in free
Yeah.
agency with a UCF
With
alum, but Javon Baker's an interesting dude, man. Followed him closely during his couple of seasons at the University of Alabama, was a little bit hit or miss. He kind of found himself still at the tail end of just that hellacious run of wide receivers
Yeah.
that Alabama had when especially Jamison Williams came in from Ohio State, and you still had John Mechie around even at the end of that. He moved on to UCF, and a lot of times guys move on from Alabama. We don't always hear much about them, but credit to Javon Baker because he's been on the ascent, it seems, ever since he made the move to Orlando.
Yeah, in terms of before we get into his kind of measurables, his kind of what he's working with athletically, something that does should be encouraging for anybody thinking about Javon Baker as a prospect is so in 2022, he gets to UCF and they're playing in the American Conference and he goes for about 800 yards, 5 touchdowns, solid season. They make the jump to the Big 12, which I know Big 12 defenses aren't exactly, it's not the top of the line in college football, but he makes the jump with UCF to the Big 12 and goes off for like 1,100 yards, seven touchdowns, and most importantly, a average reception, like average yards per reception of 22 yards per catch, which is insane. For when you have 50 plus receptions in a year and you're averaging 22 yards a catch, that's definitely good. I think those are very encouraging signs as like a guy that he doesn't necessarily have the same with those first round talents, some of this, guys that might sink into the second round. He doesn't quite have the insane athleticism that some of those guys have. He actually ranked 32nd by NFL.com standards in terms of wide receivers at the 2024 combine. So yeah, clearly kind of out of that group. But at the same time, I mean, a guy who clearly has balled and also, got to Alabama, didn't work out, did goes to UCF, is able to handle the adversity, handle all the changes that they're going through with switching conferences and stuff. Also I think he's had multiple quarterbacks at UCF. All those are really good signs.
They are, and he's a guy that's going to come from a Gus Malzahn offense. So the route tree with Gus can sometimes look like a twig. Doesn't always branch out in
Yeah,
that offense. But one thing about Gus Malzahn offenses is that they do produce a good bit of explosive plays off of that power spread that he likes to employ. Javon Baker is excellent in 50-50 situations, contested catches. Sometimes he'll turn an easy catch into a tough catch.
yeah,
Consistency is something that you're still wanting to see more of from him. But in some of the biggest games, as you said, for UCF, you think about Oklahoma, some of those games, he was really, really productive. So there's no questioning that part of his game. It's just, I guess, positionally, where do you plug him in? Is he more of an off the ball receiver? Can you play him on the ball out wide? Do you work him more inside? But an interesting thought there with Javon Baker, perhaps as a third round selection out of UCF. Round 4, according to Matt Miller's 7 round mock draft. Evan, he goes back to the lines of scrimmage for those 2 selections that the Jags have. Austin Booker, defensive end from Kansas, followed by an offensive tackle in Javon Foster from Missouri. Separated by just a pick, those 2 there
yeah.
in the 4th round.
No, with Booker, start with him because that's the I guess the first of the two that pop up for Matt. Booker is kind of like Mason Smith, where it's like very, very small sample size, but has, some traits that are really encouraging. NFL.com actually compares him to Max Crosby, which, might be a little bit of a stretch, it's a
Wow.
little early, but hey, I mean, I'll take it. But uh it's he's got like apparently like I have not watched a lot of Kansas football this past year, but apparently they've lined him up like all over the place, and his style of rushing is unique, is literally the word that I'm seeing. So with those long arms, I mean, he's got 33 and 7/8. I mean, that's pretty good. That's kind of what you want to see, and he's also got some pretty large hands. There's stuff to be, I guess, optimistic about, but this is kind of a guy that I don't even know if the Jaguars would necessarily have a full picture on until, or any NFL team that drafted him would have a full picture on until he's, in the organization, practicing every day. He is very much kind of a unknown quantity.
What about the offensive tackle selection there? Middle of the fourth round or so. Does that make sense? We've seen the Jags obviously try to address that position in recent drafts, including a year ago. You're thinking about maybe Cam Robinson, big picture wise. Do you like that pick at that point in the draft?
Well, I like Foster, primarily as a backup option, just because he's been very healthy at Missouri. He's played a lot of football with the Tigers, and for the most part, he has missed very, very little time. Obviously, we're talking about a fourth round offensive tackle. This is not a guy that I mentioned backup. Like, you do not necessarily want this guy having to, start games for you. But I think you have to, for any NFL team when you're approaching the draft, if you're not taking like basically one offensive lineman position, at least one interior, one outside, each draft, you're kind of losing pace. You need to always step that up. And really, if you look at the Jaguars' offensive tackles, it's not like they have a complete setup where a guy like Javon Foster just wouldn't make it. Cam Robinson and Walker Little, obviously, and Anton Harrison on the other side, but the guys outside of that are Cooper Hodges, Cole Van Lanen. These are not, they're guys that the Jags obviously have on there for a reason, but definitely not guaranteed roster spots. If they took a guy like Foster in the fourth round, I would anticipate him kind of becoming Anton Harrison's backup, unless it was, or maybe even if they like a guy enough for his swing tackle potential, they could still kind of use a really good swing tackle.
Yeah, take a shot there. Maybe you develop into a future starter at a position where you're
Yeah,
typically going to need to spend a lot more draft capital to
yeah.
find that plug and play option at the tackle spot. Round 5 for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Buckle up for this one, Evan. Will Reichard, kicker, University of Alabama to the
This is what
Jacksonville
we need.
Jaguars. Would it be mushroom cloudish, the reaction to the Jags taking a kicker in round 5? Is the roster really to a point where you feel like in round 5 you can go ahead and spend a pick on a kicker? And look, we know about Will Reichard better than most. I would say just about anyone out there. Covered Will during his career at Alabama. Great, great college kicker. I've wondered in the last couple of years, as great as he's been in college, is it really translatable enough to the National Football League? He came back for another season at Alabama in 2023 because he really wanted to show that. I think there were questions about range. He's got multiple makes over 50 yards at Alabama. As we know, today's NFL, though, I mean, we're seeing guys not in game situations exclusively, but at different times in games, run out there and try 60 plus yarders. It's become the expectation now for kickers in the National Football League. Does Will have that kind of juice? I'm not sure if he does, but it certainly would make for some interesting reaction, I think.
My rebuttal: who leads college football history all time points?
I know.
Will
There's
Reichard.
no refuting that.
Sign him up, Balky. Come on,
But the
let's do it.
league don't care. The league
No, it's
does
true.
not care.
I would
And I
flip.
think, listen, I think Will can kick in the National Football League.
Yeah, for sure.
But do I think you got to spend a fifth round pick to get him?
Eh, yeah,
That's a
I
little
would.
high for me, but
I
I
would.
get it. I get it as a need for the Jaguars where they're at right now.
I would flip both positively and negatively. I would be like, "Wow, that's a waste of a pick," but I would also be so stoked, just as an Alabama grad, as an Alabama fan. I just be like, "Wow, yes!" I know Dilla. Shout out to Dilla. He would also be losing his mind as an Alabama fan. He like I feel like I've seen that dude tweet more about Will Riker than any other Alabama player the past year. It's yeah, it's not a good pick. It's not like a good pick for the spot because you can definitely still get a actual contributor. This roster is not so good or whatever or deep that they can't get somebody that can contribute in the fifth round. But at the end of the day, if you're gonna go get a kicker, I mean, if you're gonna do this, if you're gonna on day 3 draft a kicker, I mean, there's only one or two other guys coming out this year that I think you would maybe take over Reichard. So I'd live with it. That being said, I also know that my wallet might not live with it because you're looking at someone who bought a TJ Yeldon jersey like 10 years ago, a Jaguars 10 if Will Riker gets drafted by the Jaguars, it is going to be so difficult for me to not buy a Riker jersey. I've never owned a kicker jersey, but I think it might be time if they draft him. So yeah, if
I'll
you
say this: I would trust Will if I was
yeah,
going to take a kicker to make the transition
right.
successfully. To the level that you spend a fifth round pick on him, I'm not sure about that.
Yeah.
But I will say this: I think from 55 and in, you're fine. But again, we're seeing freaks these days as kickers. I
Yeah.
don't think it gets talked about enough. So many of these guys, it seems like 58, 59, 60, 62. And these coaches just run them out there like it's a 37
Whatever.
yarder.
Yeah.
It's crazy to me as a former kicker. I cannot in any form or fashion relate to to what a lot of these guys are doing these days, kicking the football.
Yeah. I
And
mean, or go ahead.
they've tried to, they've tried to slow down the kickers. I mean, they've got the K ball that came in years ago. These guys are kicking those things now like they're full of helium or something. It's really the damnedest thing I've seen in a while.
It's insane. The only other option I would take besides Reichard, and this guy will not get drafted, so it's probably the smarter decision. But give me Mevis, Missouri. Give me the big boy.
Yeah, the
I
big
want to.
boy,
Yeah, yeah. Let's
he's
do it.
got range. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
The
So
big boy
yeah, I
can
mean,
boom it.
hopefully, hopefully we get to the seventh round and Reichard's not off the board, and then they can take him in the
Yeah.
seventh. They take him in the fifth. There will be multiple clickbait articles from around the internet just being like the Jaguars did what? The reactions are crazy. Yeah. So we'll see. Who knows? I would be like I said. I would be conflicted in my emotions after seeing his name pop up on the draft coverage. But
You got a great sample size on Will Reichard, man. You got about 4+ years of production. You've seen him in some big moments. The only big moment I saw him not convert on was into regulation at Tennessee
yeah,
in 2022. I think that was a 50 yarder and it just missed to the right. Otherwise, that dude was money in Tuscaloosa. Round 6 in Matt Miller's 7-round mock. He has the Jacksonville Jaguars taking a center, Evan, and
hmm
Matt Lee out of the University of Miami.
yeah. Again, I said earlier that really, if you're not taking at least one inside, one outside offensive lineman in the draft, you're kind of falling behind. I mean, you really do just need to load in those dudes. And when you think about some of I know the Jaguars offensive line wise over the past decade has kind of just been tough. They haven't hit much in free agency. The one thing that they have done is a lot of the different guys that they've drafted later in the draft, offensive line wise, whether it was with Balky or former GM Dave Caldwell, they've kind of hit on. You think about Brandon Linder, Ben Barch, he's now with the 49ers, but he's got a very legitimate role on that team. That's like a fifth round guy. So you do need to take these guys. And in terms of a fit on what the Jaguars need out of, a center, obviously with the addition of Mitch Morse, he's the guy right now, or he's at least competing to be the guy. I think the Jaguars are just saving face with Fortner when they say it's a competition, to be honest. I think it's Morse's job, and Fortner is absolutely the backup. But the thing that Fortner was so frustrating and terrible at this past season was snapping the ball and then immediately getting blown off in pass protection. Like, just could not stop anybody. And when you have interior pressure and the pocket is kind of inverting on itself, it's never going to work out. Trevor's moving outside and immediately getting hit, whatever. But the thing about Matt Lee is that of the only one of the few things I know about this dude is that he is considered to be one of the best pass protection center slash interior guards in this draft in terms of just sample size, in terms of like tape, all that stuff. He's been fantastic for the Hurricanes in that sense. As a run blocker, he's a lot more average, and really, I mean, this is not exactly this is not a guy that when you look at him, he looks like an NFL center. He's a bit undersized, 6'4", 300. I mean, obviously that's
You
a
just
huge
dealt.
person,
You're
but
dealing with that with Fortner, right?
yeah,
Kind of.
exactly. So that is it's almost like they're trying for Fortner again. When they drafted Fortner in on day 3, a couple of years back, like that was, it's the same. It's kind of the same thing. And I don't mind. In the 6th round, you kind of get to a point where it's, all right, let's just, we're looking for upside. We're looking for anything. I think Lee, has good enough tape that he's worth that shot. Again, it would be kind of annoying though to draft a guy that has the same issues and kind of shortcomings as Fortner, but who knows? You don't, like I said, it's all about getting them in the camp and seeing what they do.
Yeah, all due respect to Will Reichert and Matt Lee, if it went down this way with those picks in the 5th and 6th rounds, and understanding they're late round picks, but I also understand I don't think the Jaguars are at a point roster wise where they can kind of look at it like, hey, let's take a couple of flyers. It's not like they're loaded up with additional picks
Yeah.
either in this draft. They all kind of need to count here.
Yeah.
Those 2 picks would surprise me a little bit
Yeah.
with a kicker and another center because you said it. Matt Lee's 300 pounds. I'm thinking, okay, if you take a center there, even in the 6th round, I'm kind of okay with it if there's some positional versatility there. Like this is a guy I
Right.
can cross play or cross train at guard, right?
Yeah.
If I can't do that, I don't really get taking another center there unless you're going to make a move with one of the other 2 that you've already got on the
Yeah.
roster.
Yeah.
7th round here for Matt Miller in that 7-round mock, Evan. Nelson Caesar, defensive end from the University of Houston. See, I like that kind of pick late, If I'm
Just
going to spend a
yeah.
7th, I'm going to go positional value, even if it's a guy that's maybe a little bit of a tweener in some ways, but the production is there. That's the kind of pick I like.
No, I think Caesar especially makes a lot of sense. Like everything about this guy looks like a 3-4 outside linebacker. Like he is that, and again, kind of a dude who, isn't really insanely impressive with the size at 6'3" and 250 pounds. But if you go watch, like, the only clips I've seen of this dude is basically knocking dudes out. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
he hits really hard. He's got he seemed like he doesn't have like insane like 40 times or anything like that, but he does seem to have like that horizontal quickness, kind of that twitchiness that you would like to see from
Play speed. Yeah.
yeah, play speed. And so yeah, like totally. This is a guy that, I like you said, if you're gonna take a flyer, you've got, you're kind of their outside linebacker setup is pretty established with Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker. And they obviously added Travis Gibson to hop in there. Yasir Abdullah's in there. But they could, this is a guy that even as a 7th round pick could absolutely make the roster, could beat out maybe for that. If they go for 5 outside, 5 on the outside there, like 5 total players, he could get that 5th spot. I think I would be cool with it. I will say that Nelson and Mason Smith and Booker as selections, if the Jaguars did this, if they got those three guys, I would be very annoyed that they did not get a true nose tackle. Now, I understand that that is like one of those things where people don't, sometimes like, oh, well, you can kind of just have a big body in there, blah, blah. Devon Hamilton was either injured or not very good last year. It showed. It showed in a big way. And having Armstead and Robertson Harris on those, in those two spots on the side of the nose tackle, that's great, awesome. They literally don't have another nose tackle on the roster. I know Armstead can shift in. I know Harris can shift in. You want those guys on the outside. That's why you have them there. So if the Jaguars go through this draft and they don't get at least one guy that could be Devon Hamilton's backup, that is a concern for me. That is like the only part of this mock draft that doesn't seem especially realistic to me, because I feel like the Jaguars will almost have to do that. But really, I mean, I like the idea of, getting, really athletically talented guys to line up behind Armstead or line up behind Trayvon Walker. But yeah, I really do hope that they address the nose tackle position.
Yeah, and other than Will Reichard with these picks, you're not really projecting much in the way of special teams with these
Yeah,
guys when you're
yeah,
going line of scrimmage heavy and those type of things. But again, you don't have the added selections maybe that you've had in some previous years, like the Jaguars. I guess you could make the argument the problem for the Jaguars to an extent right now is maybe they've got too many special teams guys
yeah.
on
They've got a
this
lot of
roster.
we're the strongest special teams
Need
lineup
some
in the
positional
NFL.
dudes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
you need that's the thing is, I if you're with only 8 picks, you don't have a lot of draft capital to move up and stuff. But it really does feel like the Jaguars are a team that actually may benefit from having less picks, but all just in the first 3 to 4 rounds. Like, if you could get 5 picks in the first 4 rounds, I think that would actually be more impactful than the Jags having 8 over the course of 7. But we're just gonna have to see what Balky does. They made they picked up a lot of picks over the past 2 years, like on draft days. So I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of trade back and add a bunch of spots like they've done in recent years. Maybe move out of the 17 spot if the corner they want has been taken. Okay, well, we can move back 3 spots and pick up maybe a fifth and a seventh, and that way they can kind of have some more chances. But
Still a lot to sort through
yeah, for sure.
in a relatively short period of time. And it's not just draft season, as we know. It is also we love the win totals. We love to
Yes.
get into
Got to get
those
those
as
futures
we
out there.
talk about college football, the National Football League, and as we know for the Jacksonville Jaguars, the over under for wins in 2024, Evan, has been set at 8.5. Boy, I think it's interesting when you look at some of these totals for other teams too around the National Football League. I think about the Eagles and the finish they had to the season
Yeah.
and how that probably impacted their total. I think they're 11.5. If you'd have told me like in late November that the Eagles would be 11.5 for 2024 at that point in the season, I would have laughed at you. But similar with the Jags too. If you'd have told me before San Francisco walked into our place and hammered us that the
God.
Jags were going to be 8.5 for 2024, I'd have said, oh, no, there's no way. But again, finish to the season. Some teams ending on a high note. I think that's impacted them in another way. And then there's teams like the Eagles and the Jags that have probably been impacted to a negative extent.
Yeah, 100%. The one that is surprising to me too is, so because the Jaguars, dropped 6 of their last 7 or whatever it was, that's why their win total is at 9 rather than maybe 11 if they hadn't collapsed and won the division. The book only has Texans at 9.5. I mean, even if the Jags win the division, I think the Texans probably win 10 games. Like, honestly, like, so that's one I'm looking at. But in particular with the Jags, I think 8.5 is probably on, fair based on perception. I think Vegas has set a good total there where I think a lot of people bite on that either way. There are people that are going to say, oh, Trevor Lawrence is a bust. They're going to lose 11 games. There are people that are going to say, oh, the Jags are going to figure it out this year. And, they have all these reasons to figure it out. They're going to win 11 games. So, when you look at the schedule, if we want to go down the line a little bit, there's definitely wins on the board. However, it's not like the Jags really got lucky by being second in the division rather than first. They still have a pretty tough slate, all things considered. We can just go down with the home opponents first, obviously, we'll do the division. You've got, we'll just do the division teams first. But, Texans, Colts, Titans, home and away. The Jags own the Colts. So I'm going to say those are 2 W's really right now. I don't, even with Anthony Richardson coming back, being healthy, I think if they are going to sweep any team, we'd say that. The Titans and the Jags can't help but split every year. I mean, it feels like that. And then the Texans are where things get dicey. It's, we split with them last year. Honestly, that win in Houston was extremely lucky. Extremely lucky. So, with that, it's like, I would take a split every day of the week. So if you split with the Texans and Titans and you sweep the Colts, you're looking at 4-2, right?
Yes, that is
4-2.
absolutely
So
correct.
there's
4 and
4
2
wins right
between those
there.
3.
You already got 4 wins. I mean, the over's got to hit, right?
This is easy.
Yeah, this is
Where's
great.
the kids' tuition money, honey?
So Patriots, you got to think that you win that. I mean, the Patriots are in a rebuild year. Like, it's at
Yeah, you'd
home.
like to play the Patriots twice if you could.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Go in the AFC East for
Jets, it's all contingent on A-Rod, Aaron
yeah,
Rodgers, that
100%. Again, at
situation.
home is optimistic, but it adds some optimism. But
Packers look to be on the rebound pretty nicely.
yeah, Packers. I mean, I wouldn't even though it is a deep road trip for them. After how they looked to finish the year and how Jordan Love looked, I wouldn't like right now. If the Jags and Packers were playing tomorrow, I would take the Packers. Like I would take the Packers every day of the week.
In Jacksonville, you take the Packers.
Yeah, I would. Honest to God,
Wow.
because I think Vegas would probably set that at like they would honestly probably set it at like Jags minus like 2.5 or something. I would take the Packers covering at the very least.
Yeah, when you look at the non-divisional opponents in Jacksonville for the upcoming season, Patriots, Jets, Packers, Vikings, Browns, kind of rank those for me in terms of most likely to win for the Jaguars or to least likely to win, I guess you
Do
could
you want
say.
to
You
just do the home games, or you want to
No,
include the
we'll get to the
away?
away games too, but
Okay.
you're saying you'd have the Patriots at the top of that winnable list of
Yeah,
non-divisional opponents in
Patriots. I
Jacksonville.
would put Patriots and then Vikings. I think Vikings are
Vikings with
also
Cousins moving on.
yeah, they're very much, and I mean they've lost some other pieces too. Like Justin Jefferson is the type of guy that can win a game no matter like who else is on the field. But I just think that the Vikings are not there right now, and they're getting ready for this new era. I like to think that we could beat them. So Patriots at the most winnable, Vikings, and then we'll put Jets at number 3.
Ooh.
And then we'll do Packers and number 4, Browns, or is the least winnable game on that list, I think.
I
And it is a winnable game. Like it is a
Right.
winnable game. I'm
They're
not
all
saying
winnable, I
yeah,
think, all these home games.
they're all very winnable. But the Browns, I mean, we saw what they were able to do to the Jags with Joe Flacco last year. It was in the middle of the Jags collapse, but still, like that defense is absolutely insane. It's not getting any worse really this year. And I think that in some ways the Browns are going to be a better overall squad with some of the additions they've already made and what they could do in the NFL draft. So
Here's where it gets tricky though. It's a 8-9 split in a 17 game season for the
yeah,
Jags. 8 home games, 9 road games. One of your 8 home games, as we know, is going to
is in
be
London. Yeah, the
so
London game, if they
you're
can get
really 7-9 and then a neutral.
they got to
Although
get
Jags have maybe been better in London in some
yeah. Well,
ways,
that's what I was
you
going to say.
know.
If they can get that Browns game in London, they're winning. Like it's a
England
W. Yeah.
England national champs,
Yeah.
Jacksonville
Yeah.
Jaguars.
I mean, we
Yeah.
don't lose over there. So,
England world
um,
champs.
Yeah, the official Premier League champions. But no, that does actually super matter. It's like a joke. Like everyone's like, oh yeah, like but honestly, like the Jags in London. I mean, they beat the Bills last year. Like, I mean, they they can they are good at it. They've done it, and the organization understands. And we've heard about the different things that they do to kind of better set themselves up compared to what other teams are experiencing when they're over there. So yeah, that does matter. But we can transition to the away opponents if you want.
Let's do it. Same thing with the divisional opponents, obviously Titans, Colts, Texans. I start at the quarterback position with all these teams.
Yeah.
Um, Titans, Will Levis. I'm not sure if he's Josh Allen at this point. I'm not sure if he's Carson Wentz.
I don't think his
I
first year told us anything
I
about
don't know.
his actual level. I
Yeah.
really don't. Like, I mean, he half the time he was playing, he was on the run, he was just trying to survive. With Levis, I think he's obviously, he's still clearly a great prospect. He's still clearly got all these traits and a huge arm and what have you. But yeah, this is kind of going to be the year where we get an idea of like, oh, was he just bad, or is he in a bad situation?
Anthony
Um,
Richardson with the Colts. You can go back to his time, even at Florida. Can he stay on the field?
Stay healthy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been rough for him.
And CJ Stroud is,
Stroud's the real deal.
yeah, it's
And as much as anything, the culture and just the identity that D'Amico Ryans was able to establish as quickly as he did, that makes it, it's one thing to be talented, as we've seen with the Jags. Jags have
yeah,
been talented, but man, when
just
you have that legit sort of dynamic of who you are and you're not going to waver from that day to day, week to week, that makes you even tougher to beat. And the Texans obviously struck gold atop that draft in 2023.
yeah.
So, Texans, you got to think the divisional opponents toughest game. Although winning in Nashville hasn't been easy for the Jags historically
It's
either.
pretty random at this point, and I mean, we never lose to the Colts at home. On the road, we're a little less consistent, but still, I mean, you got to think that that road game is winnable. I will say the away opponents a little stronger than the home opponents. They kind of did the Jags a solid with the home games. They didn't do
They
them as
better
much
win the
as
home games.
yeah, they really need to be a home, the Everbank Fortress, gotta tighten it up. But because other than really the Bears, all those games kind of look tough. The Bears even might be tough, I mean, if they're rolling with Caleb Williams, obviously that's seemingly the plan. If he's that guy, then that's going to be a difficult game. If he's just all right, or if he's got growing pains, then the Jags ought to clean that up. But then you've got the Detroit Lions, the Miami Dolphins, and the Raiders, and the Eagles, and the Bills. And after the Bears, the most winnable game is the Raiders. But even that game, I mean, Antonio Pierce, in the same way that we're talking about with D'Amico Ryans, that team cares about playing for that guy, and they do have some talented guys across the roster. It's not the most talented roster by any means, but they've got some guys. In terms of if I wanted to pick a home record, I would go with 6-2. I think they can go.
Including London. Yeah.
Yes, including London. I think 6-2 is a reasonable expectation. Um,
Yeah.
it kind of needs to be 6-2. Like it kind of needs to be.
I think it's doable. I think 7-1 is achievable, especially if these games were all going to be played in Jacksonville. And again, it's not like the Jags haven't had success in London in the past. But then you get to the other side, and you kind of look at this situation again in terms of quarterback play. And we talked about the Titans, we talked about the Colts, and certainly the Texans from that regard. But the Bears potentially with Caleb Williams, that could be a lot of fun up in the Windy City. The Lions with Jared Goff should be really, really solid once again at that spot. Tua is a bit of an enigma. Supporting cast, though, looks to still be certainly good enough. The Raiders, who knows? Maybe you get Michael Penix Jr., a rookie quarterback, something like that. Either way, the Jags should be in a position of advantage, assuming that Trevor is healthy in that situation. And then Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, very
It is
good
what it is.
quarterbacks, as we
Yeah.
know. So I go 6-2, 7-1 between Jacksonville in the London game. And then when I get into the away games, I think the Jags can certainly win in Indianapolis. I think they can win in Tennessee. Now, doing it, as we know, has been a entirely different thing. And then between games, like I think the X factor games probably in all of this, in terms of over the 8.5, Evan, or under it, are games like the Bears on the road, the
Bears and
Raiders on the
Raiders.
road.
Yeah.
Those are
Even the
the kind of
Dolphins.
games as much. Yeah, even the Dolphins. Yeah.
No, it is I definitely, I say 6-2 on the home game, and people are probably like, oh geez, Evan's about to say that they're going to win 13 games. No, no, no. I think they go. I would take 4-5 from this away slate. I would. That means you went 10-7. You're making the playoffs, and that you might even be winning the division. But 4-5 would be solid if you can, beat 2 out of 3 division opponents, and then beat 2 out of 3 of Bears, Raiders, Dolphins. You take that. It's hard to think you're going to go, up to Orchard Park and beat the Bills. It's hard to think that you're going to go into Philly and beat the Eagles.
And we don't know
So,
yet either when these games are going to fall on the schedule, right?
well, and not to mention too that one of those games is also in London. They're
Right.
playing 2 London
They're
games.
playing the back to
So, I mean,
backs. Yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, one of those, if that's again, it's a kind of a similar thing of like, well, if you get the Bills in that they got the Bills in the second game in London this past year after getting an easier opponent like the Falcons in the first week. That was an easy way to pick up 2 wins because the Bills have to make the travel. They weren't over there the previous week. That really does, when the schedule releases, that means a lot for a team like the Jaguars who, you're going to play 2 games away from home in a place that you typically win. So,
And
no,
is
I
it
think
late December when you go to
yeah,
Philly or
or is it October,
Buffalo?
or is
Yeah.
like on it, and every team's different. I would want to play the Dolphins in December. I wouldn't want to play the Dolphins in September. Like if you get Dolphins like week 2, they're probably going to boat race you because Mike McDaniel, doing like that's when they like to score 70 points a game and, before they kind of, lose their way. But yeah, I think if, based on current setup, I think the over is the bet. I think it's going to be close. I think the Jags win total will be somewhere
That's
between
the way
8 and
Vegas
10.
loves it.
Yeah, I mean,
How they
it's
get the
somewhere
money
between
coming both ways.
the ceiling. I think is 11. I think the floor is 8. Win total wise. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting, and obviously, the draft can change things. They might still go get somebody in free agency or a trade. Who knows? The we've given up on the Brandon Ayuk idea, but you never know. I mean, it seems fairly clear that they're
The
gonna.
conversation really can change in a week. It
Yeah.
can.
So, but as things stand, I like to think they get the over. We should do this again though after the schedule is out, coming up to the season, like in August or
Readdress
so.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Revisit.
after injuries and all that different stuff, we should definitely come back to it.
And we will, because that's what we do right here on No Sleep Till. Evan Reier, Travis Reier. It's been a lot of fun, Evan. I look forward to doing it
Oh
again
yeah,
real soon.
yeah. No, I'm having a great time. This is a good outlet to get all my Jaguars frustrations out on.
Jags
So, uh,
angst.
Jags
And a
angst,
place
but
to celebrate.
yeah,
I
of
think
course.
it'll
You know,
facilitate that. It won't be all just
yeah. No,
venom
it's
and
we're I would say pretty fair. We're if you go on Jags Twitter, I don't think they would be as fair
yeah, it's
as
not a rant show, put it that
yeah,
way.
yeah.
You know.
Hey,
Well, not this week.
not
We'll
yet.
see.
Yeah, give us a
Get
few
into
months,
September.
a few
Yeah.
weird decisions, and we can get into it. But no, we'll be back next Wednesday to do it all again.
Yep. So for Evan Reier, Travis Reier, thanking you for joining us right here on No Sleep Till. Until next time. So long, everybody.